everyone. Happy Monday. I hope you all are having an awesome Monday today. I'm so excited. This is actually episode 3 of our Motivational Mondays. Whoop, whoop. I don't think I'm ever going to start an intro without being like, whoop, whoop, it's Motivational Monday. Melissa, I see you jumping on, girl. I cannot wait to get you on here. Okay, so for everybody that does not know me, my name is Lauryn Laszczak. I'm actually a mama of 2 girls. I married my high school sweetheart. Him and I both live in Michigan with our family, and we are actually building a real estate business together right now. And then I also have been building a beauty business for over a year now. So for those of you who haven't watched just yet, basically the idea for these Motivational Mondays is I, over the past year, have talked to so many amazing women who want to build a business, love the idea of it, and who want to start but maybe never do, who are in the middle and it's a little confusing, or who are rocking it. And I just want to share more of those stories. Almost all my conversations with these kind of women go the exact same way. So I feel like, man, everyone wants to talk about this. They want to hear about this. So like, let's start to share the truth about some of this stuff, like not just what's on our Facebook and our Instagram. So that's kind of the idea for where these Motivational Mondays came from. I just got a little thrown off because I saw my mom jumping on. Hi, Mom. Got to give a shout out to the woman that really started this all. So anyways, all right. So my guest today is Melissa Bandera. I am so excited. Melissa and we've known each other for years now. She's actually helped build quite a few things for me. We'll jump into that. She helps women and men create beautiful online presence and branding, all that kind of fun stuff. So she's really gonna get into it with us today. So if you already have a business, this is gonna be great. Or if you are like, man, that's the kind of stuff I dig, this is gonna be great. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna add her to the conversation right now. Yes. All right, Melissa, come on board, girl. Such a hype, such a buildup. It says inviting. Hang in there, guys. Let's hope. Oh, there we are. Hi.
Hey. All right. Hold on, let me put up the volume. There we go. I think I'm good.
All right. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I always feel a lot better when I see the other person connected on the other side. I get like so nervous.
It worked. This is my first time going live, so
Yay.
Yeah, I was a little nervous.
You know what? That's okay. I remember, and I tell all the women on my team, I'm like, it's super nerve-wracking the first time, and then after you do it, you're like, ooh, this is good. Like, you just want to do it more. So I'm really glad that we're doing this for the first time together. Thank you for doing it with me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So for those of you out there who don't know who Melissa is, Melissa, why don't you tell us kind of what you do?
Well, I'm owner of Jelly Design Studio, and I design websites and blogs, e-commerce for different small businesses, and just different creatives. I work with a little bit of everything. I definitely do work mainly with women, not just kind of happens.
Yeah.
I do feel my style a little more feminine when I design, and it just kind of works that way. And I love it. I love working with all types of women who are starting their business or in different parts, like just basically in different parts of their business, whether starting or, you know, kind of growing it or already at where they want to be.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is funny. So we just talked for a couple minutes before we jumped on this call, you guys. And I was like, okay, Melissa, so did we meet when I was starting a blog, or was it when I had a photography business? Like, Melissa's done so much for me, and it also kind of made me realize, like, hello, prime example, how it takes time to figure out where you're supposed to be. So thank God you helped me along the path, and here I am, totally different field, but, you know, sort of all intertwined. But I was like, yeah, man. So I think we actually met when I had Inspiration and a Carry-On, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was the first project we worked on.
Yes, and that was a blog that I had, and it was a WordPress site, and I was like, girlfriend's got no clue what to do here. And you swooped in and saved me. So thank you for that.
And I feel like that happens happens a lot with a lot of my clients. They start in one path and then just like life takes them in a different direction, or they find another passion along the way. Sometimes they still have maybe their original, the original thing we worked on together, and then they're growing into other things. So it's really cool to kind of just see how people evolve. And it's just like, you know, it's like I start feeling like I'm, you know, like we're friends, like we're ready to work together in so many things. I see their growth and it's awesome. And I also get to see my growth because I see like what I worked on, like on your blog when I first worked on it versus to like what we did for your photography site. Like I felt like we both had grown so much. So it's really cool to see like how we evolve like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Well, God, I can't even imagine like how much you feel like you've grown just from the start. So why don't you take us like back. So for those of, you know, people that don't know you, or maybe people are on here that are watching that are like, well, actually, like that's what Melissa did for me, but they really don't know your story. Why don't you share your story with us?
Well, I started by mistake. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm getting over a cold.
Okay.
I started by mistake actually when it came to web design. I had a business that I did wedding invitations and just like invitations for different events. So I kind of started with that, and I needed a website. It was definitely out of my price range at that time because I had spent so much money on like inventory and supplies and everything. I was like, okay, let me try to figure this out. So I bought a book and I started learning how to do it, and I figured it out, and I was able to get like my own site up and running. And then my husband needed a site for his business, and I was like, well, let me give it a try. I did one, why not do another one? And it just kind of started from there. Like friends then started asking, like I had a few blogger friends, and they're like, hey, like, can you do this or that or update this? So it kind of just accidentally happened. And I realized that I found something. I was lucky to find something I really loved doing. Yeah. Because I did enjoy like doing invitations and stationery, but it was more of, I was like, oh, this is just something that I could do. But when I discovered, wait, I actually enjoy the process of web design. Like I loved all of it. So I was like, I think, you know, it was just kind of like, it called me and just kind of went that direction. And I never really did a lot of invitations.
I love that. Don't you feel like that's our most creative start? Like, even like how we just talked about how you've seen so many women like transition. It's because they're just figuring it out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned, I started the invitation thing more just because a friend had a wedding. I did the invites and I thought, sure, why not? I can do this. But, you know, and I enjoyed it. It's not that I didn't like it. I just, along the way, found a new passion, found something that I really loved doing. And it felt that I could just contribute so much more to help others create their brand, or, you know, again, like start their business, start their blog, whatever it is. Like, it just felt like I could really bring something, just something bigger than, you know, just, and not that there's anything wrong with invitations and designing that, because all of that is beautiful, and people who do that, that's amazing. But I just, you know, like for me, it just felt like the right thing to do. Like I felt like it wasn't just, oh, it's another job or another like little side hustle that I'm trying to do. Like this was something I'm like, I want this to be my career. I want this to be what I do.
Yeah. So how many years has it been then?
I started, let's see, I've lost count. 8 years ago I started, and then it's been 7 years since I've been full-time. Okay. On my own.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, there's Joey. He wants to enter the conversation. So let me ask you this, and it might be a little deep dive in a way, but how many times have you wanted to quit in the 7 years? And I asked this, I know it's kind of like, whoa, Lord, but when hearing 7 or 8 years feels like an eternity for a creative, because we do transition a lot. So like to me, I'm like, damn, that's awesome. Like you stuck with something for that long. But I know there had to be times when you're like, I'm out. Like, correct me if I'm wrong.
So many times. And it's just, I love it, and I always love it. Even when I'm kind of like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And it's just more because I let something frustrate me. You know, it could either be a tricky client, it happens, or it could be something that I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I'm like, wait, I don't know how to do this. Because there's been a lot of times that I'm like, okay, I'm going to, you know, I designed something. I'm like, now I need to develop it. I'm like, but wait, what did I don't know how to do this. So I had to figure it out. And it's just like the frustration, owning a small business, you know, anybody who owns a small business knows it's just the business part of itself is frustrating. When tax season comes around almost every year, I want to quit.
Yes. Oh, I hear ya.
So there's just like a lot of little things here and there, but when I sit down and I really reflect and realize, I'm like, no, like I love doing this, because again, I get to work with so many different people. I worked with bloggers. I work with people who have, boutiques, whether they have like a real storefront, whether they sell, like I've worked with bakers, every type of business. So it always feels like I'm working on something different. It doesn't feel like I'm doing the same thing again and again, which would drive me crazy. But it just always every client it just feels different. Even if it's kind of the same industry, I've worked with a lot of photographers in the past, but it always feels different because each photographer has their style, has their niche that they focus on. So it just helps me like find the challenge in it, because I need to find a way to make their work or, their product, their services stand out and not look like all the other projects that I've worked on or other people have worked on. That's the whole thing. Like I have to make everything unique and make it work for that specific brand and that person. So it's definitely like, it's a good challenge. And I think that's what's helped me be able to continue doing this and not be like, oh my goodness, another site.
Yeah. Even just you saying that, I feel like, man, that is a huge responsibility. Like as somebody who has branded themselves multiple times and is still trying to figure it out, like it's a big deal. And actually that kind of makes me think, you as the person doing it, like taking on the responsibility to figure out how to help brand a person. Do you find yourself like trying to not look at other people's stuff? Like I say that in the sense of even doing these conversations, I love podcasters and I love like the Marie Forleos out there. But I'm kind of like, okay, don't listen to those people while you're doing this, because I don't want to sound like them and I don't want to like I don't want to feel that pressure. I want to be inspired by them, but I don't want to be influenced by them. Like, how are you in that space? You must see other people's stuff and you're like, I don't know. How do you do that?
That's hard. Because it's true. Like you go on Pinterest and you see all these beautiful logos and all these beautiful sites. And I do look at them. And at the same time, like, it's good and bad because I look at them like, oh, like, I feel like this was so creative. This is so original. Like, I could have never thought of this. And it's just like, you start comparing a little bit, which is normal. It's more like, I just admire some of these designers and other people that do what I do. I have a lot of friends that actually do the same thing I do. So it's really cool to see their work and see them grow. But at the same time, like, oh, like, I feel like now I can't do that. Yeah. Like, let's say a color scheme or a style that I was going with. But at the end of the day, like, we all get to make it our own and make it, just because, let's say something has the same color scheme or kind of like even the same fonts, things like that tend to be very trendy. You see them a lot. So you can't, like, I've learned that I can't see it as, I'm not, you don't copy anybody, but you're allowed to get inspiration. And I feel like probably, as you were a photographer, like, I'm sure you've gone through that, because same thing, like, there's so many different photographers, there's so many different ways to shoot something. And I feel it's the same way with a site. Like, you can still create a site using inspiration from other designers, other creatives, but you still make it your own. And it's definitely kind of scary sometimes because the internet is a big place. And, we all get the same ideas sometimes. So it feels a little scary. You never want anybody, to think you're copying or trying to steal another idea from a different brand and stuff. But it's definitely a little scary. I try to limit how much I look at other work, just because I feel then like I kind of like, oh wait, I gravitate towards that idea a little too much. So I try to like limit a little bit when I'm doing research for a project, just so that I personally don't feel like I want to do something that I've seen already.
Yeah. And I think the point that you made though about it being like, like, for example, I'll be on Instagram, right? And I'm like, oh, I love these image of women doing beauty, maybe it's a beauty image or maybe it's real estate, right? But then I'm like, as the more I scroll, I find myself kind of feeling like the sense of inspiration goes from inspiration to overwhelm to like,
yes.
There's so many people. Like, there's a lot of noise, and it just makes you feel like, am I just like one in a million? And then if it's a good day, you're like, but I'm one in a million. So it's like, it's fun to talk to other people who do stuff where it's like, it is so much like socialized that it's almost like
Yeah.
you do get to the point as a creative where you're like, how am I still being like individual?
Yeah, it's definitely tricky. And when you mention it's like, it does get to a point that it starts, you feel inspired, you see all this great work and you're like, I can do things like this. And then after seeing too much of it, you're kind of like, oh, like, how am I going to stand out?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's definitely very tricky. And, you know, I love social media, but at the same time, I try to restrict a bit of it. And just like everything, not only inspiration, but seeing what other people are sharing about the work they do and everything. Just because it does get overwhelming, you kind of feel, then you start comparing, you start feeling like, I can never make this, or why would anybody hire me when someone else can do it?
Mm-hmm.
But I've, you know, and again, like, it's one of those things. I have those days that I'm like, yes, I can do anything and everybody's going to hire me.
I know.
But then there's other days I'm like, oh, like, no one's going to hire me.
So, and that right there.
It's tricky.
I think that's why people people don't start, because you'll be in that high mode where you're like, yes, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
I have so much to offer. A million people are going to want to hire me. And then like the next day you're like, maybe I don't even want to do this. Like, how you got to, like, if you don't have I don't know if it's the coffee in the morning or what, but you got to be at the right energy level to start. And I assume you even have to do that every single day as a creative person trying to make something original for somebody else, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's, you know, again, a lot of up and downs, days that I feel a little more like, oh, I can't do all these awesome things that other people are doing. That's kind of the day that I focus a little more on like more of the technical parts of what I do, because as I do the development as well. So I focus on that. And then days that I'm more like, I got this, got my cup of coffee, I'm ready to go, then I focus more on design. I kind of like, I've been learning, even with this much time doing this, it's still a learning process, because sometimes you got to see what works for you and what doesn't. And I do hear that a lot from people that are like, oh, I've been wanting to start this business. It's been 4 years that I've been planning it, and now I'm doing it. And it's great that they get to that point. But I definitely tell people, I have a lot of friends that, you know, they start like with ideas that, oh, I'm going to do this business. And they just kind of like let it like, you know, just kind of disappear, the idea. And I remind them, I'm definitely like a little bit on top of people, a little too much sometimes. And like, you said you were going to do this, so you're going to do it. Because you just can't wait. Like, it's good to plan. Definitely. It's very important to plan when you're starting a business, a blog, just anything. It's good to plan it, but you have to go for it, because if you don't,
you'll never,
you know, other people are going to do it. And that's good that other people, there's always going to be somebody else doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
But if you don't go for it, then they're just going to keep doing what they're doing and you're not.
Yes. And I think, I just heard, I was listening to David Bach today. He's like a financial investor guy. It was more of like a money podcast. And he was talking about how it's over decades, not days. So like, it's over decades that you make the progress. It's not days that you make the progress, but we all want it like immediately. And especially your customers too, they're like, okay, I'm ready, girl. Let's build this website. And the next day they're probably like, where's my website? How do you deal with deadlines? That might be a good question, because I'm really bad at deadlines. I'm really bad at time blocking. Like, I feel like you probably have some looming deadlines. Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, with deadlines, I'm old fashioned and I put everything in my planner. I like writing it down because it gives me, it's just, for some reason, I've tried like Google Calendar. I've tried all types of things. And at the end, my planner is the best thing to help me with my deadlines. Yeah. Because I get to see them. I open my monthly view. I get to see everything that's coming up. But I try doing like time blocking to say, okay, today I'm going to work specifically on this, and then tomorrow on this. And for me, that just doesn't work. Because like I mentioned, some days I wake up and I'm ready to go. I can do like logo after logo, design all the sites, and I'm great. Like, by the end of the day, I feel like I conquered everything. But then there's other days that I'm just staring at my screen. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, is that it? Like, am I done?
I hear that.
So those are the days that I focus more, like, you know, like I mentioned, on development. I focus on like all the boring bookkeeping and kind of like more of the business side of things. So I'm not very good at like blocking out time for specific tasks. It's kind of more like how I'm feeling it, because sometimes I'll block that time and say, today I have to work on this. And I'm just not feeling it. So then I waste that hour or 2 hours and just kind of sitting there trying to figure it out when I could have been doing something else.
Yeah.
So, but definitely my planners, what helps me, like I see my monthly views. So that does kind of like, you know, if I know like I need to turn in this, you know, first mock-up for a website, I need to have it done by that day. But I don't really pressure myself and like before, like how many days before I have to have it ready. I just kind of let it happen.
Yeah. I feel like most of us creatives do.
Yeah.
Can be good
yeah,
or bad.
I feel like with most of like the other creatives that I know, it's kind of the same system. A friend of mine does, like, she definitely blocks like every hour of her schedule, and I don't know how she does it.
And
it's like
her
a superpower.
Yeah, that is totally a superpower. Like, I don't know how people do it. I'm so confused by it. Well, not even that. It's like you have great intentions, and then all of a sudden, like for me, my daughter wakes up 15 minutes later, so then like I'm immediately behind. And for us, it's like if you're not getting done what you're supposed to get done, like you're not always making money. So that's like the hard part of it as a business owner. There's days when it's like, yeah, it looks really cool that I own a business, but I make no money today. Like, you know, like that part of it. That's why I really like having these conversations, because I think, you know, I can look at like your Instagram or your Facebook, and you guys, it is beautiful. We'll leave the link to it, but like your posts are really beautiful. The images are beautiful. Yes, I love it. And you have a great talent at that. And I feel like somebody could look at that and be like, oh my God, she is killing it. But you, and I don't know this, but you could be on the other side, like, shit, like, thank God for my husband. Or, you know, like, I don't know, like everybody's stories are so different, but that's why these conversations are so important, which, by the way, I know you're married. Is your husband a part of your business at all, or how does that work for you guys?
Well, he's my support system and tech for anything when the internet is down.
Yes.
But no, I do like all of my work. I've always tried, like, he has designed a couple things for some clients. Definitely more of my, like, the few like male clients that I get. And it's really funny because most of the times it's clients that I've worked with, it's their husbands. Because they're like, oh, she did my site, so you're just going to hire her.
Yeah.
So, his strong point, he's definitely, like, he does more of, like, now that it sounds weird, I'm trying to see the best way to phrase it, but definitely my work is more, like I mentioned, more feminine. It's lighter. It's prettier, I guess. There's definitely a lot of gold foil, of course, depending on the client, but it definitely feels, you know, just more feminine.
Yeah.
So his design work that he's done, he does things that are a little more like, not rough, but a little more masculine, darker colors. So whenever I do have a project that's like that, I might start things, but I'm like, okay, finish this up, make this good.
Yeah.
So he has been my designer a few times, but not many. He has his own job. And then also he used to illustrate things for another business that we had and everything. So, but he's definitely my support system, which is great to have, because there's a lot of days that I'm frustrated. I just want to cry, or I'm like, you know, again, like, I feel like I'm going to quit today. Like, this is it. And he's like, sit down, think it over, talks to me about it. So it's definitely good to have that support system. I have that same thing, like, you know, my best friend's same thing. Whenever I'm feeling stressed out, I'm texting her. I'm like, I want to quit today. This is terrible. I don't even know why anybody trusts me. and she's like, all right, what happened? Let's talk it over. So it's definitely good. Like, you know, I work from home. I'm on my own most of the day. So it's good to be able to have those people you can either text or, you know, call, whether it's like people, like, even like social media friends that, you know, there's people that some clients that afterwards, you know, we keep connecting, we keep talking, and we always talk through like Instagram or Facebook. So it's nice to have like that support where you can talk to somebody else, and they don't have to be business owners for them to understand. Like, I know a lot of times, you know, people mention like, oh, it's good to have people in the same industry or the same field, or who also other creatives or business owners. But I'm like, honestly, as long as you have a support system, people who are listening to you when you complain about those hard days, it's just good to have that.
Yeah, and probably it's better to have that in a sense. Sometimes, like, when you're too close to something, you can't see it, or like, you know, it's such a good point. Yeah. I feel like your husband probably, and same thing for me, like, doesn't get enough praise for how much involvement they have in your business, even when, like, you have a feminine business. Like, I kind of say a lot, and like, yeah, I have a beauty business, but I try to say, like, it's not just mine, it's our families. Like, every person is involved. And there are definitely days where we're sitting at the counter and he's like, what's your deal? Like, why, you know, get it together. Like, thank God, Like I truly don't know what I would do without him or without my son and sisters or my good friends, because it's like you do need those people. A, talking you off a cliff half the time, and
Yep.
B, also like making you appreciate like all the good stuff you've done, because I feel like it's easy to be like, I am not here, I'm not doing this yet, but it's like, oh my God, look at all the great stuff you did, like that in and of itself. You need that. I mean, it sounds like that he's that person for you too.
Yeah, he always reminds me of what I've been able to accomplish in this time. Because like that example you mentioned about social media, like, you know, I take a lot of photos of my desk all pretty and little notepads and all this stuff. But in reality, that square is the only thing that is organized, because everywhere else is chaos. I have like 5 cups of coffee from like the week just accumulated at my desk. Like, it's, you know, it's real life. But the thing is, you know, I think it's okay. You know, there's always that argument of like, how much of real life do you show on social media versus how much of like a staged or, you know, kind of like a pretty photo. And the thing is, like, I think it's okay to show those staged and pretty photos. But I think it's also okay to be honest about it. And I always mention it. I'm like, there's so many times I take these cute little photos of my desk and it's so pretty. And really, like, it's a mess. Like, there's just Post-its everywhere. It's chaos.
Yeah.
But it, you know, again, like, we compare, like, even though I know that I do that and I share these photos, like, I see other people that do the same thing I do, and maybe they're always traveling or they're always doing different things that I'm just not doing at that time. And I'm like, oh, but look at this person. They just started 2 weeks ago and they have all of this. And, you know, I know we all do it, and I hate that we all do it because we shouldn't do that. But it's just a moment that we take. And then my husband's a good reminder. He's always like, you see what somebody wants you to see on social media, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with sharing the good and sharing all the awesome things that you get to do, whether it's with your business or personal life. But you just have to remember that what somebody is sharing, they're just sharing a moment of their life. They're not sharing all the hard work that maybe had to go behind it, or, you know, just all the nights that they didn't get to sleep. Like, when I first started my business, I was still working 9-to-5 jobs. So I would come home and literally get back on my computer and work till like ridiculous, like at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was still working, and then I would get to work and almost fall asleep on my desk all the time.
That's why I love coffee so much.
Oh yeah, I went, like, it was becoming a problem. Like, I just had to drink so much coffee to stay up. And the thing is, that was part of like my struggle in my business and how I grew. And not everybody goes through that, or other people get the opportunity of maybe just kind of, you know, they start their business and it grows really quickly, and that's great. Like, everybody has their own story. So we just tend to compare a little bit. We want to see what other people are doing, and social media just offers so much of that you get to see everything. But we also don't realize sometimes that we're seeing, you know, the filtered version of it, which is okay. But my husband's definitely one of those people. He reminds me, he's like, you know, you need to stop. You need to realize everything you've done. And he kind of just starts listing things and, you know, all the great projects I got to work on, because he doesn't work on, you know, the projects with me, but he definitely, like, he hears me complaining or, you know, talking about how excited I am about like this product launch and stuff. So he, you know, he keeps all that in memory. Like, sometimes I'm like, are you even paying attention? And then obviously he is, because he's like, oh, how's so-and-so doing? I'm like, how do you know my client?
Oh, that's good. Men do have selective hearing like that. They are listening when they want to be listening, you know? That is so cool. Well, you kind of briefly said, so I want to ask you, you said you had that full-time job, and then, you know, while you were growing your business, where, like, what was the thing, or where was the point that you were like, all right, it's okay for me to shift to this full-time? Because I think most women that I speak with, like, they are doing a side hustle, and I actually kind of hate the word hustle, but they are growing something on the side, taking away from other things in their life. So, like, it's hard to know, like, when is the time to shift? Did you have a moment that you knew, or what happened for you?
Well, I picked, my husband always says I picked the craziest time to leave my full-time job, because we had just bought a house.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, we had just bought a house, and then about 2 months later, the job that I had, it was a lot of spreadsheets, a very like data-driven job. I did not love it, but you know, it helped pay the bills, and it felt like a secure thing. So I realized that I had to start actually putting people on hold for my business, telling them, well, I can't really start on this right away. You might have to wait a month. And some people wait and some people don't because they have their deadlines as well. So I started seeing that that was happening a bit. And I then mentioned it to my husband. I'm like, hey, what do you think if I do this full time? And he was definitely, he was supportive. He always jokes that I picked the wrong time. And part of it, I'm like, maybe you're right. We're just getting into like a house and a mortgage and all that grown up stuff that, so it was a scary time, but he was definitely, he's like, go for it. Because his, like what he mentioned is like, you can get a job anywhere else. So the only thing holding you back is the fear of, not having this particular job. He's like, which you don't love, because it's very different. Maybe if you did love, if you love your current job, it's a little harder. Yeah. But I didn't really love it. It was making me kind of sick because of the stress. Like, it was just not the environment that I wanted.
Body was probably trying to tell you, get out, get out.
Yes, it really was. Like, I realized always, like, Monday mornings, I would feel sick. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense because I was just fine on the weekend.
Oh, my God.
So it was crazy. Like, my body was reacting to the stress of it. And, he's like, honestly, he's like, you leave it, you try it. He's like, it's scary, but you go for it full time. And he said, and like the idea was, if it doesn't really work out, then I could always look into getting back into another job. That at least in the, like, what really helped me be less scared of it, he's like, just because you might have to go back to another 9 to 5 or, more of a traditional job, doesn't mean you can't continue your business and try again. Because I feel sometimes we feel scared of leaving our day job to pursue our, what we really love, our business. And we think that if we have to go back to a day job, we failed. And we didn't. It just means that it just might have not been the right time, but not in a bad way. It's just, you tried it, it didn't work out. You go back to, because again, like, bills need to be paid. So if your business isn't cutting it, it's okay to go back to a regular job, even maybe look for a part-time situation or something else. Yeah. But that was kind of like our backup plan. So that helped me feel less scared of it. Because at first I'm like, oh, if I leave this job, it pays well. And this is like, I don't know if my business is going to cut it. He's like, if it doesn't, you get another job and you keep going for your business. He's like, you don't stop. You just, you try to rearrange things and make things work. And that definitely helped me. And that's like one advice that I always give people when they're thinking about leaving their job, because everybody is scared, and it makes sense. We all have bills. We all have responsibilities that need to be taken care of. Yes.
Hashtag adulting.
It's no fun, but it's, excuse me, it's the reality. But you just kind of got to see it that way. Like, just because maybe it didn't work out the first time around doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to pursue your business full time at some point in your life. It just might have not been the right time, or who knows, like, maybe going back into the work field can get you more knowledge in what you're focused on. Like, if you're working, like, I wasn't working in something in like that was in any creative type of way, but it's still, like, I could have gone back into something creative that maybe I could have learned more, or, a little better learning curve when it came to owning a business. But, it's just one of those things. You gotta go for it. That's really the reality. And it sounds like really cliche, like, just go for it, just do it. But, when you go in with that backup plan, or just kind of that thought process of like, if it doesn't work this time, it can work the second time around. So
it is amazing how when you really like get to the root of the reason that you don't do something, whether it's a business or anything, it just comes down to fear. And then, like you said, you break down that fear and you're like, okay, like, if I really break this down, what's the worst case scenario? And I've never, thank God, maybe I'm blessed, but thank God I've never had a really bad worst case scenario. Like, it's always like, yeah, you're right, I could just go get another job. Like, yeah, we build that up in our brains, like, we make it something so huge. And then you kind of realize later, you're like, oh, it wasn't really that big of a deal at all,
Yeah, it's true. Like, because for months I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, it's going to be scary. I'm not going to have a real job. I'm not going to have a paycheck and everything. And, when it got broken down, I was like, but that can be resolved if for some reason it doesn't happen. It's always good. Like, we did have a little bit of money saved up, so we knew that for a few months, everything was going to be okay. But I'm like, well, if by that time it's not okay, like, I can still fix it and we can move on, and then I can, try again. So it's definitely with all fears. I think it's like that. I think it still happens to me. Like, every month I get scared because I'm just like, what if I don't get enough clients this month? Or what if this happens? Or, it's just like these weird like thoughts that we get, or like fears. And it's just, you got to sit back and really think about it and kind of like analyze it. And that's why it's always good to have like support system, a husband, a spouse, a friend, anybody that can just kind of like help you understand the fear. Because I feel like when it comes into our head, we don't really get like, we can't like really get rational with it and like really see that it's not that big of a deal. Right. But other people from outside, they can be like, okay, well, why don't you try this?
Oh, okay.
I was like, no, oh, true. Okay.
I think it takes the longest time to understand. And, you being somewhere for 8 years, right? 8 or 7? 8. 8. I think it took me a really long time to realize, and I'm still, like you said, working on it every day. When you own a business, it is never smooth sailing. No. You are not racing to the finish line. You are a hurdler. Like, you are constantly being challenged, challenging yourself. The world is challenging you. Like, you're never just going to make it to the finish line. And for some people, like for me, who likes to cross off a list or write in a planner, like that can be really hard, because it's like, I want to like see progress right away. I want to hit the finish line. And it's like, well, no, Lauren, like you just got to like, if you want this to work, you actually have to keep jumping.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to realize it though. And like you said, you're working on it every day.
Yeah, it's a process. And I feel like you're always learning new things. You're always realizing things about your business. And I mean, there were things that I was doing probably like 5 years into my business that I'm like, why am I doing things this way? Like, it's not very productive. It's not efficient. And I like, so constantly I'm always making changes. And that's something that I try to really like, I'm not great at it, but I always try to analyze my business each year and see, wait, how can I make the process more efficient? How can I, what can I learn to make things better for my clients? And
smart.
Yeah, you just have to kind of like always try to evolve. And again, it's hard because I know that there's many things and I'm probably still doing tons of things wrong.
Yeah.
But, I try to like step back. I try to think about it. I really do that like at the end of the year, kind of just like analyze my business, make any changes that I feel, because it's always scary to make those changes too, because there's times that I'm like, but I've always done it this way. What if for some reason, if I stop doing it this way, all of a sudden nobody's going to come to me, which again, not very logical, but but it's kind of like that weird, like you feel like if you change something, you're going to break it.
Yeah. And I also have a lot of women who want us to stop. And I'm like, well, instead of stopping, like, why don't you just look at maybe something needs to change? Like you can't just, you're never going to see progress if you stop. But like, maybe you look at the last thing you did and you're like, God, I didn't have as many customers as I wanted. What could I change? What could I do different this time? Like, you don't just stop. Like, that's never gonna work.
Yeah, that's true. Like, just stopping that means that's it. It's done. Which if, again, sometimes people, they feel like that business or that stage of their life is done and they're good with it, then that's okay. But if it's just because you're not getting clients or you're not getting sales that you thought,
or results
step back, look
at
it.
You wanted.
Yeah, that too. Like, I've had so many people who start like fashion blogs and their first question is like, how can I make money? Or how can I get free clothes? I'm like, you can't start like that. Like, everything is different. But like, for example, with blogging, you have to grow your audience. Like, it's a whole process. Like, it's not just overnight that you're going to be able to get all these ads onto your site. So I try to explain that to people, and people I feel who are serious about it definitely will understand it. Other people that are just trying to find like a way to make quick money, it doesn't really work out that way, unfortunately. But I'm like, if you want to do something, you have to start. And obviously money is important. We can't lie.
Yeah.
Because again, responsibilities, but you can't just start thinking like, I'm doing this just for the money. Like, you need to have solid reasons why you're doing something, because then I feel it's just easier to grow it, because you take the time to realize what you need to offer, what you need to do, or what changes you need to make. So again, like that example, like with people who are trying to blog, like, yeah, you can definitely make money off of it. You can get sponsors, you can get ads, but you have to grow first. You have to create that content. So, it's just, again, we see that little part of, what people are doing already, but they've taken like years to get there, and it's, up and down, and you can't just kind of like,
you kind of have to grow to grow. You have to keep learning and evolving and give yourself the time, and then hopefully you'll see some progress. Like, you gotta give it time.
Yeah. And you got to put in the work. That's, the reality of it too. You have to put in the work. You got to put in the time. you have to try different things. When I first started, certain things didn't work, or certain services that I thought, oh, this would be great, and people just weren't interested. And that's okay. Like, I realized, okay, let me not focus my time on that. Let me focus my time on what's working. And those are things that I've noticed have helped. It's like not really just focusing. If something doesn't work, that's okay. Move on to the next thing and try it, don't quit on things, but like, cause if you have a great idea that you want to try to add to your business, definitely don't quit on it, but try to see how you can maybe market it different, or maybe you can change what you're offering. Just kind of make those changes. Honestly, like, it's scary to make changes. Again, I'm always scared whenever I make any change, whether it's to my packages, the way I do things, even things that I do like back end that nobody's really looking at. I get scared because I'm like, what if this just breaks this whole system? And all of a sudden, like, people realize I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, but it's silly because, again, I have an idea what I'm doing, but it's just, you have those days that you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then other days you do. So it's just figuring it out and trying new things and really putting that effort, creating that content or creating what you want to build. And it takes time. Just definitely, it's hard because I'm not a patient person at all.
I don't.
But it takes time. It takes work. And when you love it, like, you understand like that it takes that time. It takes that patience to grow. It's like anything, you have to put in the work.
Absolutely. Well, I know that there are going to be a lot of women watching who do have a business and who either have thought about their online presence, their branding, or B, maybe they're rebranding. Maybe it's the first, second, third time. So I definitely want to ask you, for those women watching and anyone watching, like, if we don't hit something, ask a question. Like, even after this live is over, Melissa can come back and she can help you. She can answer it for you, and we'll of course connect you. But for anybody who's watching, like, what are some things that, if we're just brand new to branding, that we can start to think about within our businesses?
Well, I always tell people when they come in and they're like, I want, starting my business, they show me a logo or they show me kind of like what they currently have. One of the biggest things I've noticed is there's a disconnect with a lot, like all the different channels that there are. So let's say like Instagram, Facebook, and, your website or your blog. Like, I see that a lot. There's like that disconnect of like very different feels throughout each platform. And definitely when you're trying to, create a strong brand, create a strong online presence, like, I feel it's very important to try to keep a consistent look. It doesn't mean that everything has to be exactly the same. What I mean is kind of keep that same vibe, that same style. Let's say, for example, like a photographer, for example, one thing that I've always noticed is they kind of have the same style of image. Obviously, the scenery might change, the place might change, but the way they kind of edit, some photographers I noticed, like, they go a lot darker, moodier photos. So if you're more of like, if that is what you focus on, if that's what you work on and that's your main niche, then try to focus on that. Like, you wouldn't share photos that are very bright and sunny on Instagram and then on Facebook share like those moodier, more like serious photos. So that's kind of like, like the easy example of like how that like disconnect happens. And the same thing happens with like color schemes. Like, you see a lot of like, again, you might go really bright on your website and everything's cheerful and bright and sunny. And then all your, your graphics on Facebook or anything you share on there, it's very like dull, or like, let's say just black and white, for example. Like, you kind of want to keep the same consistent feel. So it's good, whether you're kind of, DIY your own brand or you're working with somebody who's creating that brand. Usually the first part would be kind of like a mood board. So you get an idea with different, like, just get an idea of this, again, like that style, that sense that you want. And it's important, like, make the brand your own and don't try to create a brand or an image that doesn't really fit you, because then it's hard to keep it going, Like, I've had people that kind of they're like, I want everything, very black and white, very, very chic, very clean. And, but when I start talking to them and getting a better grasp on their personality, I'm like, but you're very bubbly, you're very cheerful. Like, I think like brighter colors, but they just kind of want to go more with what's trendy versus what they are. And I feel then it just becomes harder because it's harder for you to create that content because you're not going to be as inspired to do it. So definitely like create a brand that reflects you and who you are. And it's, it's not important to be trendy. Again, I love things that are like gold foil and glitter and everything, But if that's not a client style, I'm not going to push that. You know,
Right.
it's, you have to do what's comfortable for you, because then that way it just makes it easier for you to keep that consistent look and feel throughout everywhere. You know, you want people to be able to see, you know, your images or your graphics or anything that you share online and know like, oh, this is from Lauryn, like, because they know your style, they know that type of image that you kind of have for your brand.
Yeah. What would you say to someone, because I feel like maybe you have this perspective or maybe you don't, depending on the clients that you work with, but I feel like it's a lot easier for like a beauty business, let's say. It was a little bit easier for me to figure out my brand, if you will. And then Ronnie and I, right, we have this real estate business that's so different than my beauty business. And there's not the same kind of creative imagery, if you will. It's houses and selling. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's oil and water in a way. So what would you say to someone who's maybe watching that isn't in the creative field, like isn't a photographer, isn't, you know, a blogger? Like, how do you brand yourself when you're like, I really need to be professional and I really need to come across a certain way, and it's a little less creative and more defined?
Yeah, I do think that's one thing I get. A lot of people are like, I want a very professional site. And the thing is, yeah, we can create a very professional site, but it doesn't mean it can't reflect your personality. Things such as easy, like even like, you know, a headshot that represents you. You know, let's say like you mentioned for real estate, your images are going to be more homes. Like it's not going to be so much about you. It's more about the homes you're selling.
Yeah.
But I feel that in that case, like when you're trying to create something that's more, you know, the visuals are more already given to you, I think your personality tends to come out more with your content. So the way, you know, your writing is, whether, you know, on your website, on your captions, anything you share online, just kind of write how it feels natural. I know that sounds easier than what it really is, because anything, when it comes to writing, I'm always like, it's always really hard for me, but you just kind of got to write how you would reflect yourself, how you would represent yourself. And I feel like that definitely is a big thing. Like I've had a few sites that are more, not so much focused on the individual. It's more of a brand and, you know, a little more professional, a little more like these are specific images that are being offered. But I try to include that, like, you know, focus on the content then. Like, how can we represent your personality, your style? How can it make it stand out? Like, great images of, like, I'm sorry. Great images of my clients that, you know, somehow embedded into that design, into whether it's a website or again on social media. It's good. People want to see the business or see who's behind the business, especially if it's a service-based business. They definitely want to see who is behind that. And so it's good to, you know, invest that money in some good headshots and some good photography of yourself representing who you are. You don't have to be, you know, like the same, like everybody in a blazer and a you know, blue blazer and all. It's like, be who you are. And I think that helps your business a lot, because again, people are going to come to you. There's all types, there's thousands of realtors, there's thousands of web designers, there's thousands of everything. But I feel like not only does your work, you know, represent you, and obviously that's an important part, but your personality does as well. So let that shine through in any way that you can, whether, like I mentioned, whether it's just the content that you share, try to get great images and things like that, I feel will help represent you and make you stand out.
So, yeah, and that's always interesting to me, because like I've said to my husband many times, I'm like, it's been really hard for me in a sense, because I have one business that's so fun and like bubbly and I'm wearing bright lipstick, and then I sometimes feel like I go to this other business that I feel like a little bit of a fraud, because I'm like, I am not going to be in a jumpsuit, you know? And like it sounds so silly, but it took me a while to realize, like, well, yeah, of course you're not. Like, that's not how you're ever going to be in the normal day. Like I heard somebody say this before. They were like, whatever brand you're trying to represent, if it is not you, if it's not authentic, like you'll figure that out very quickly, because you almost want to think of it as like, if you met somebody in person and you were like, oh no, I'm actually Lauryn with Meadows Beauty House. And they weren't like, oh yeah, of course you're Lauryn. They're like, oh, you're Lauryn? Because I'm like totally different than like what they're seeing imagery, the colors online. Like you should almost look like represent the way that your brand represents. And I thought that was very like, it was a good point, because I'm like, yeah, like if I'm representing this kind of person, and then they see me and I'm like a hot mess, no makeup on, never wear lipstick. Like that's not really gonna, it's not gonna transcend into like what my customer, who they thought they were buying into, in a sense. Like, and I guess another question I have for you is, how many times is it okay to rebrand? Because I have a lot of women who it's like, I've already rebranded and I don't even know if I did the right thing. And then maybe they're thinking about branding the third time. And it's like, how do you, is a brand, I guess the question might be, is the brand ever final? Does it keep evolving, or is rebranding too many times a bad idea?
I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of different thoughts on that. Some people feel that once you rebrand, it should be perfect and represent everything. But I think we're all evolving. I've rebranded quite a few times.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of clients, same business, but they come back and they want to rebrand. They want to change something. Sometimes it's small changes, or sometimes it's like this full, complete overhaul. And I think it's okay to rebrand, because like I mentioned, we're always changing. We're always evolving what we offer. It could be the same business, but we could change our services. We can change what we're offering, or even our style. Like, when I started, my style was a little more on the cutesy side, like a lot of patterns. There was just a lot going on. And once I found like more of my style, the type of work that I wanted to do, again, like I'll work with all types of clients, but I do always feel that it's good to have like that niche and what you're comfortable with, or what you feel that you can excel in, and definitely like give like, something where you're like, I'm always proud of my work. I don't mean it like that, but what I mean is like, there's just times that I'm like, oh, what I created here, like it felt so natural. It felt so easy. Because it felt like it's something that I love to do. There's other sites, again, that are a little more clean cut, a little more, they're just kind of want to keep it simple, and that's fine. And I love working on those projects, but definitely like, I like being able to do what I love to do, specifically that type of design work. So, we're always changing, we're always evolving. Like I mentioned, at first I started, my style was very different than what it is now. So that's why I've rebranded my site a few times, and my brand in general, because it's not really what I used to do before. Like I work now with a lot more boutiques, so I definitely have rebranded my business to kind of flow better for that, and just to be able to attract that customer. And I think that happens with everybody, whether you're real estate, whether you're in beauty or anything, you're always kind of going to change your style. So I think it's okay to rebrand. My only thing is, when you create that brand at that moment, you should love it. Not just kind of go with something and be like, it's okay, let's just move on. Like, you definitely need to love your brand, because again, it makes it easier, it makes it more natural, it makes it something that you want to work so hard on. Yeah. So, but it's just it's not a bad thing if like a few years down the line, you're like, you know what, we need to change. And I think that's okay. Yeah. A lot of people are kind of scared of doing that, because they're like, oh, what if I rebrand and people don't like really recognize my image anymore? And I don't really think that really happens, because I feel you're probably already evolved anyways at that point, when you're kind of like, wait, I don't really love this anymore. I did before. I feel like it needs a change. So by that time, like, you're going to notice that what your work has evolved, and it's just going to feel right. When you feel like it's that time to rebrand and do that change, go for it. You got to go with your gut. When it's your business, that's your baby, that, it's part of who you are. So definitely like what feels right, that's what you should do with it.
Right. I kind of think about it like, y'all know I love HGTV, and I kind of think about it like my living room, right? Like my walls are gray, and I love the gray, but I've lived in my house for almost 4 years, and I've switched out the accent color, like now the color is blue, and I'm really digging blue, and in 3 years, I'm probably not going to like blue anymore. And so you can kind of keep the structure, but change the base a little bit. So I feel like it's probably the same within your brand.
Yeah, that's a great like way to explain it. Yeah. Like, you're always going to change a bit. You're going to make, sometimes it might just be small changes. Like we might just be cleaning things up a little bit. Sometimes people go with things that are a little trendier, and then a few years later, they're like, you know what, maybe this wasn't the right choice. Let's clean it up, or let's change this out. So sometimes it's just small things. And then other times, again, it might be a full rebrand, just because they've changed so much in that time period. And I mean, I do the same thing with my office. I'm constantly changing it. I'm constantly adding something here, removing something there. Yeah. And it's just, from what it used to be, it's a completely different place. And, you know,
So
we
are
change.
we. Exactly. Well, listen, I feel like I could talk about branding forever, and I just love it, love it, love it. If anybody has questions for Melissa, please just write them below. We will answer them, but I don't want to keep you forever. So I do want to ask you this one last question, which is basically, if you could, you know, write a letter to your former self in your 20s and like magically send it back to that girl, what would you say to her?
To trust my gut, to go with what feels right. I feel when I was younger in my 20s, I definitely did things more thinking, oh, you know, this is what everybody wants me to do. Or, you know, I studied marketing, and that was what I majored in. And it really doesn't have that much to do with what I'm doing with my business, just because a lot of people are like, oh, it's great. And the thing is, when I went to school, it was more focused like corporate marketing. It was a very different type of, you know, style of marketing that I majored in. So I didn't really go into my business. Then again, at that time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I did want to do. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately my degree is just kind of like sitting there in a frame somewhere tucked behind and getting all dusty. But, you know, I kind of went with that just because it felt like the safe route. I wanted actually to go to culinary school because I love to bake.
No way!
So, and I always wanted to do something creative, but I didn't really trust my gut. And I'm happy with where I ended up, because I still bake for fun, obviously, and I love it, so that's fine. But it's just kind of trust my gut. I should have gone with something more creative, something that I would have probably maybe stuck to. But, you know, I went with that path because it felt like the right one. And when you're young, you do things like that. You feel like going the right path or doing what everybody does is the right thing. So I'll definitely tell myself, trust your gut, go with what you want to do. And, you know, because if you fail, you do something else. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, you just move on and you try something else until you find the right thing. When the right thing comes along, it's just going to happen. So just kind of go with that.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe you would still be where you are. I bet you would be. Like, that's just how it works sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
And also, I bet you really love baking now, because I do find that when you're like, oh my God, I really love this thing, and you try to make it your career, you hate it. Like, that's how I felt about photography. I was like, I love taking photos. It's going to be my dream job. And as soon as I was doing it as a business, and like, I was successful at it, but I hated it. I like stopped taking photos of my kids. I stopped like wanting to, I stopped wanting to pick up the camera because I wanted to pick up the camera.
Yeah.
So sometimes making your passion your job, like, it doesn't always give you that final feeling that you're looking for. So who knows? It could have manifested in the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I feel like we'll find, you know, you'll find your path regardless how long it might take. Sometimes maybe going one way might make it a little shorter to get there. Another path makes it a little longer, but at the end, I think we do get to that path. So I'm happy, obviously, with, you know, with the path that I was able to go on and everything. But, you know, I just think it's very important, you know, like, trust your gut, go with what you feel is right. You know, sometimes we tend to ignore it a little bit because we want to go down the safe path or do what everybody expects you to do, which is, you know, and it happens. We all do that.
Also, what we expect ourselves to do. Like, it's not just always external. Sometimes our mind and our heart are just conflicting, you know?
It is. It's true. Like, you know, just even leaving my business, like, it felt like, leaving my job for my business, it felt scary because I felt like, well, you know, what's going to happen down the line? What if it, you know, it could work out, but what's going to happen? I'm not going to have, you know, health insurance. I was thinking at first, you know, when you're a small business, it's very expensive. So it's going to have to find it somewhere else. And, you know, there was just all these different things that, like you mentioned, like, we feel like we have to go down a certain path. We feel like we have to do this because it's, you know, the grown-up thing to do and the responsible thing to do. But, you know, sometimes just going with your gut, like, you know, you have to think things out and plan things out, but definitely go with what feels right, you know, whether it's for your business, personal, you know, just anything. That's, I feel like, one of the best things to do.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Well, thank you, Melissa. I so appreciate this conversation.
It's been fun. It's definitely, like, I thought it was going to be a little scarier, but it definitely hasn't.
See,
like,
again,
you're
all
chit-chatty.
the years.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we did it. I hope to see you live more often in your business group or page. That would be awesome. Thank you guys. And everybody watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the time to do so and to meet Melissa. And we'll go ahead, we'll post below where you can find her. You can tell them one more time if you want, Melissa, too, in case you're still watching.
Well, the business is Jelly Design Studio, and you can find me at jellydesignstudio.com. And on Instagram, I'm also Jelly Design Studio.
Again, you got to keep it consistent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll post it below. If you have any questions, let us know. We'll come back. We'll answer them. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful, motivated Monday. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.